Major League Journeymen. Good to see you all again. Monday morning, center backs here. Myself, Daniel Gargan, Dax McCarty, fresh off another flawless performance on MLS Roundtable wrap up. They got you, dude. They got you working hard, bro.
We're
I
working,
like it.
baby.
I
We're
like
we're in
it.
the real world now.
Welcome to the real world where you actually have to do things other than just run around and kick a ball. And then we got Alan Gordito, who has informed us that he did watch some soccer, which we always get excited about because that means he's got thoughts that he may actually be able to share or that someone else gave him right before we filmed this. So, Gordo, let's start with you because the game that you, I think, maybe mentioned that you took a specific interest in, which always hurts my heart. I was, I want to touch on this too. We're watching the Seattle LAFC game, right? And and my kids are watching it and they go, "Hey Dad, who are we cheering for here?" And I was like, "I hope they both lose." And they couldn't figure it out. And I was like, what do you mean they hope they both lose?" And I was like, "Well, LAFC is the Galaxy's biggest competitor right now, biggest rival. And when I was there, it was Seattle. So I hate them both. I hate both organizations. I just can't get on board with either of them. So we hope they lose." And they were like, "Okay, got it." But you were watching it and you saw something different, Gordo. What were your takeaways from the game? Because it was a fun game.
Yeah, and another game, great another great atmosphere in Seattle going against LAFC, and these games matter. However,
Hmm.
we have both teams in a competition right now that they're trying to push, and they're obviously going. That I think that tournament champions is it
CONCACAF
Champions League
Champions Cup.
Cup. Um, it's important to MLS teams. You can see the importance of it because every team that we've seen are throwing out their strongest lineup, right? They're
Hmm.
trying to get out of the round of 16 and they're trying to make their way up. And Seattle won in 2020, whatever. But what I took from it was the depth of it. Look at the players that
Hmm.
a guy goes out early. Who went out early in Seattle? They had to replace him with
De La
where's the
Vega,
De La
our
Vega.
guy,
There you
our
go.
guy
Yeah.
that we've
Yeah.
spoken about a lot.
Yeah,
Uh,
Injury problems.
he goes out early and they put in Rusniak. And as they're putting him in, you see Morris, you see you see three other starters that they got on the bench, and the game was still quality. We've
hmm
always rotated, but the game was still fun. They still had
hmm
quality on there. They had me with names, but
They had Jordan Morris on the bench, Paul Ariola on the bench,
no, they just have quality
Jao
players that are
Paulo,
playing. Paulo's
Christian
playing.
Roldan on the
Yeah, and
bench.
and you go on, and it's just really good to see. It's really good to see for the state of our league that we are starting to fill these rosters. And Dax, you mentioned these may be two of the deepest teams in the league, but it always starts with somebody. It always starts with a certain amount of clubs that are really trying to work on their depth, use their money in the smartest way possible, so you can have these make deep runs in these tournaments, and also do your thing, so you don't really have to give up one or the other, which was really nice.
I want to say that I think I want to say did they make a wholesale change LAFC in like the 60th minute? They brought in like Hollingshead, Bawanga, Boba. I felt like they made like three subs right at the same time, and it hit on your point. I was watching that and just thinking you're bringing
Wow.
that type of talent off the bench. That's a big deal. It's a big deal in this league. MLS experience, but also like game changers, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where we haven't always had that. Dax, you commented on this a little bit, and I know that we've talked about Seattle in the past and kind of where they fit in this hierarchy, of teams right now. They kind of tend to do a little bit more fluctuating recently, as opposed to being as dominant as they have been, or I guess maybe can be. You mentioned De La Vega. Jordan Morris has been there through all of this. He breaks this, or sets the scoring record for Seattle on the weekend. When you're watching this group, yeah, you've seen Seattle the last 20 years, right? Come into a season. Their expectations are completely different now. They have to compete in multiple competitions. They have like seasoned youngsters in Jordan Morris that are now setting scoring records for the club. I caught a little bit of that interview after with him. When you watch this group now, currently, the iteration of the Seattle Sounders, who are they to you? Like what defines their franchise right now?
Sustained success and expectations are where the Galaxy used to be. This is Seattle,
Mm,
and this is what they are. For me, take away the glitz and glamour of Inter Miami and the superstar power that they have. Take away the record success that the LA Galaxy have in terms of standing atop the mountain with MLS Cup titles. Seattle Sounders are the beacon of success in MLS when it comes to consistency. The only year, think about this, the only year that the Seattle Sounders have missed the playoffs is the year that they became the only team in MLS history to win the CONCACAF Champions Cup and qualify for the Club World Cup.
mm,
And they didn't have a ton of depth on that team, which is why when they were making that CONCACAF Champions Cup run, they didn't make the playoffs because they sacrificed league games left and right. And think about this. They were very, very deliberate about the players that they wanted to go and get in the offseason. FC Dallas thought Paul Arriola and Jesus Ferreira were surplus to requirement. Guess what?
yep.
Bring them
Yep.
in. They're not going to be every game starters for us, but you know what they will be? They'll be rotational pieces that we can either start in league games or in CONCACAF Champions Cup
Hmm.
games, and our level won't drop. Jesus
Hmm.
Ferreira was a designated player in Dallas. He actively chose to take less money at a young age to say, I want to go and compete for titles.
Hmm.
That is stunning for a franchise to be able to recruit a player like that and say, hey man, we can't pay you a designated player contract, but what we can do is offer you the chance to win titles at a young age.
Yeah.
And then guess what? You come here, win a couple titles in a few years, then you earn your DP contract again, or we sell you and you go make a ton of money elsewhere. This
Hmm.
team just has MLS figured out in terms of sustainability. That's the big word for me when it comes to that. Because look at the Galaxy right now. The Galaxy right now went all in for MLS Cup. They won it. Bravo.
Hmm.
They're a shell of them for their former selves, just what they were 3 months ago because of maybe roster planning. And I don't want to disparage Will Kuntz because I think he's one of the best GMs in the league, but you can't argue with what's happening in LA right now. So that's where I stand in terms of your question with Seattle. I also want to
Yeah.
give a special shout out to Jordan Morris because he deserves all the praise and all the credit that any pundit or analyst that looks at this league can give him. If you remember, Jermaine Jones, very opinionated guy, a great player for the U.S. men's national team, and a staunch supporter of the best players that the U.S. produces going to Europe and challenging yourself at a higher level, which fair enough. He went on and he talked publicly about how disappointed he was in Jordan Morris and the decision he made to not go to the Bundesliga because he's not
Hmm.
challenging himself at the highest level. And look at Jordan Morris now. He's the all-time leading goal scorer for a great MLS franchise. He makes unbelievable money. He went to a World Cup. He found his own happiness because success is defined differently by every single player. Okay,
Hmm.
listen. If the right situation popped up, would Jordan Morris have gone to Europe? Probably, but in that moment, it wasn't the right decision for him. He made a conscious choice that he wanted to stay at his hometown club. He wanted to develop, and he's starting a family. He's scoring goals. He found his own happiness. I mean, it's not at the same level as a Landon Donovan, but it's a similar mindset and a similar mentality. And no one can tell me that you can go and live Jordan Morris's life and you're disappointed in the decision he made. And look at how happy he was in that post-game interview. He just wanted to give all the credit, and he's such a humble kid, wants to give all
Hmm.
the credit to everybody else. But Raul Rui Diaz, Nico Ladero, Freddie Montero, Clint Dempsey, Obafemi Martins. I mean, this legendary players at this club, and Jordan Morris stands alone at the top. I think this is a great success story for MLS. I think that homegrown kids, can look at Jordan Morris and say, I want to do that. I can be that. And some kids might not. Some kids are still going to go to Europe and play at the top level, and there's nothing wrong with that. But Jordan Morris deserves a ton of praise for the decision that he made and the success that he's had.
Definitely, definitely deserving of the plaudits that he's getting. And to commit to Seattle It's incredible. It's incredible to see that story from the youth and building his way up, going to college. You know, we love that because we did it, right?
Yep.
The we've seen this model and we've seen it. We've talked about it. We've talked about how, Bruce has figured out the blueprint of MLS success, how some of those other individuals are somewhat capitalizing on it. You got Craig Weibel in that chair, right? And now I think he's doing a very similar thing to what Bruce did for so many years with the Galaxy, but he's just bumped that tier of player up a touch. So you have the Roldans, you have the Areolas, you have Rusnak, who comes from, they're not the big spenders, but they are a next tier up from where Bruce was maybe valuing some of those journeymen or those, veteran presences that have experience in the
League
league that
league
come in,
experience. That's the
league
thing that sticks
experience
out to me.
and making those guys focal points of their team. Craig Weibel has done an incredible job. And you're talking about mentorship, right? Like the names that you rattled off in Seattle for Jordan Morris. Think about who Weibel was learning from. One of the best in um oh man, Atlanta, Garth in
Yeah.
Lagerway, right? Like sat under Lagerway as he built it in Salt Lake and then built it in Seattle. And now he's got the chair and making those decisions and building a pretty impressive roster. Pretty wild. Jesus Ferrer making that decision to go there. But also, we've seen this in the past, right? We've seen guys that want to stay in this league that make decisions based on championship potential as opposed to just making the most money that they can. And now within our environment, within MLS, you also have players that have this sale mechanism within the league and could get sold and could make more money and could be a free agent, which we didn't have growing up. So it's pretty cool to see. Seattle has definitely turned into a sustainable longevity franchise. The other side of that, LAFC, Gordo, we've talked a fair amount about them, and I know that the big talking point right now is Olivier Giroud and his inability to score. Are you seeing anything from him that's going to change your mind about his success potential in LAFC specifically or in this league?
Not at the moment. Not at the moment. It just doesn't look like a good fit. It really doesn't. I mean, he looks like. I mean, I want to be respectful. He is one of our generation's best, most decorated strikers, but he looks completely out of his element in
Mm-hmm.
the MLS. I mean, he
Mm-hmm.
looks slow. They don't know how to play with him. We touched on that last week. Him and Bawanga are never going to be on the same page. You're starting to see him get frustrated. There's so many runs where Bwanga's taking somebody one on one or 1v3 even sometimes, and
Mm-hmm.
he's got one. And I'm just looking at Giroud the whole time. That he's dribbling, and you want him to do that because that's what he's good at. That's why he's a Golden Boot contender every single season, and that's why they've had success. However, there is more for Bawanga to do. And I think that Trundolo, should be addressing this because it's gotten a little out of hand. And you need Giroud to produce. Otherwise, he shouldn't be on the field. If you can't learn how to fit him in with the players that you have and make it something that the team is actively trying to do, then your choice is not to play him. And
Mm-hmm.
Trundolo, to his credit, he has done that.
Mm-hmm.
He played
Abobasi.
Bobacy,
Bobasi the other
right?
the other game, and he looks more fitting for it. They're a counterattack team, and Giroud doesn't have any pace up top. So by the time he gets down there in the box, it's a shot from Bwanga, and then he's running back to recover. So it's
Yeah.
just not fitting right now.
Dax, do you think that the LAFC is in a position to move on from Giroud?
Oh, well, I don't think they're in a position to move on from him because he can't go anywhere else that's going to pay that his wages. But I think that they're in a position to be their strongest self without him.
Are there no
Uh,
clubs in this league that you could think that they could move him within this league right
I,
now?
I don't think they're. I think you could. I think you could move him, but you're going to be eating a ton of salary.
Right. You might be.
Yeah.
That's
No,
part of the cost of the
I
equation,
don't. I
right?
don't think there's any club in MLS that's going to take on his designated player tag and his salary and say, yeah, I think he's going to materially change our fortunes. Look at Dejan Joveljic with Sporting Kansas City. Joveljic
Hmm.
scored 21 goals last year on a really good Galaxy team. He goes to Sporting Kansas City, a significantly worse team with not as many great players around him, and he's frustrated. He doesn't. He hasn't. He has scored one goal. It's a penalty, but from the run of play, he hasn't. He's taken maybe one shot per game. So I just look at Giroud, and I just don't see many teams that would be willing to give up a ton of assets to take him on board. And Gordo makes great points. Gordo's right. LAFC is a transition team. LAFC is a team that does better when they have space to run into with Martinez and Denny Bouanga. And Jeremy Ebobisse is a better fit.
Hmm.
Through the first couple games, he is a better fit. And Steve Cherundolo has a tough decision to make because this kind of listen, there's different levels to this, okay? I'm not comparing them as players, but Orlando City brought in a Luis Muriel who had success in Europe from Atalanta. He scored goals in Europe. He's a
Yep.
designated player. And guess what
Yep.
Oscar Pareja said? You're not part of my best 11. My best team is when you are on the bench, coming off the bench, and I'm going to use my younger, fitter, fresher players to
Hmm.
go and stretch the game. And then you can come in when the game's a little bit more open. And I think Steve Cherundolo is going to eventually have to make that same decision. Now, Steve Cherundolo is pretty lucky because they're in two competitions. They're in CONCACAF Champions Cup and they're in the MLS play. So he can be choosy about when he picks and chooses when to play Ebobisse. He rotates them. Ebobisse starts one week in one game, and then Giroud can start the other one just to give him minutes. Once that's done, uh, Giroud is going to be on the bench, or at least he should be on the bench for the foreseeable future. And I know we look at a lot of his play as goal scoring, but look against Seattle, there were little signs that he was doing things at a higher level. His hold up play was better. His connection in possession was a little better. That's not enough. I'm sorry. It's not enough for a designated player and for a player of Olivier Giroud's stature. And I personally don't think it's all his fault. I think what Gordo talked about was very, very true. He just does not fit with what they're trying to do. Denny Bouanga, David Martinez, Nathan Ordaz, Senchi's under this wonderful player that they just brought in, the Turkish player that is going to be very good. These are all 1v1 dribblers who love to make magic in the final third, and they're not guys that are number 10s. They're not providing service. They're not providing crosses. They play with inverted wingers, Dan. So you
Hmm.
don't have Bouanga getting to the end line and pinging one to the back post. You
Sure.
don't have that on the other side. So I don't put this all on Olivier Giroud, but it's not a good fit. Gordo touched on it. Cherundolo is going to have to make the difficult decision to just say, "Hey, listen, if you can be a good pro, which by all accounts he is, you're just going to have to accept a super sub role."
Tough role. Tough
Yeah.
role. And I mean, they kind of just managed through this with Gareth Bale. It's interesting that they went back to the well and did a very similar thing with Giroud. Man,
Yeah.
there's going to be some problems there. Because that's as much of a management project as that is, you're still dealing with a superstar,
Yeah.
which doesn't usually end well. Sunday night soccer and the other team in town, the LA Galaxy, lose the third game in 3 games. Gordo, they got 3 put on them. Is this more representative, that scoreline, is that more representative of St. Louis City turning the page or of the Galaxy and where they should maybe be concerned? Or are alarm bells going off for the Galaxy? What does that scoreline tell you?
I mean, good for St. Louis. They came out and they won the game that they should have with a team that is in trouble. Galaxy are in disarray. And it just goes to show you, everything being said. Did they look a little bit better offensively? Sure. Did they have chances? Sure. But when they are not controlling the game, that is them with the ball is their best defense. It always has been their
Hmm.
best defense. And when they don't have Ricky Puig on the ball, 250 touches a game, controlling the middle, and Delgado and the way that they used to dominate midfield play, they don't have that. And so Now it's going to put the pressure a little bit more on the defense. And as you can see, they're so disjointed. They're getting run through on every single fast break is like chaos, right? It
Hmm.
doesn't look like they're organized defensively and they're being exposed. And they should be worried. They don't have a great squad without their two superstars. And when you do, it's still super thin. There's not that, we talked about the depth of the LA and the Seattle. I don't see it from the Galaxy at
They're
all.
starting 17-year-olds,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
That's true. They
So
also could have been up 3-0 at half against St. Louis City. They hit the post twice. Berkey made an incredible save on Ramirez from inside the PK spot. I mean, they did maybe enough
This was the
to
Galaxy's
change their
best
fortune,
performance
right?
of the season from an attacking standpoint,
Hmm.
for sure. So
Yep.
you're not wrong, Dan. And I want to hit on something Gordo said. And listen, I apologize in advance for the terrible dad joke that I'm about to say. But my MLS season pass compatriot on the Spanish side, Michele Giannone, he said this to us in the green room, and it's true. And honestly, I don't disagree with him. He said, look, guys, after all the Galaxy games that we've seen, I'd like to congratulate Ricky Puig on the 2025 MVP award.
thank you.
Mm.
And
Hey, who was saying that?
he's not wrong. Listen, the fact that Ricky Puig is injured and the LA Galaxy now have to go back to the drawing board and just completely blow up the entire way that they played last year and now the way that they are forced to play this year. It's true. Ricky Puig, I mean, you can make the argument, okay, Messi was the MVP, no arguments for me. Ricky Puig, if you can make the argument, Ricky Puig and Christian Benteke are the two most irreplaceable players in MLS right now.
For
If
their
Christian
teams.
Benteke was not on DC United, there's zero chance they could replace him. They'd have to change everything they do. LA is in the same boat. They are in the same boat. And look, you lose Ricky Puig, fine. Very difficult, of course. I said what I just said, and it's true. You also lose Brugman and Delgado and Paintsill and uh
Yamane's out. They have quite
And
a few.
Yamane. Like it just you guys, it's just too much. And I hate doing the injury thing and whatever, but like the Galaxy are in a lot of trouble because offensively they looked better last game against St. Louis. They came up against a great goalkeeper. But when you're not scoring goals, and then your back line, who was pretty reliable at the end of last year, they're conceding the types of goals that they just conceded
Hmm.
against St. Louis. You're in trouble. You're in a ton of trouble. And you guys have seen the GAM release, right? Where they don't have any money. They can't do
Hmm.
anything else. They just have to wait. So I think I said alarm bells are ringing on the show last night, and Max Bretos gave me a ring a ding ding. That's exactly what's happening at Galaxy headquarters. It is they are going off and look and credit to St. Louis. Let's not sweep their performance under the rug. They have 3 clean sheets in 3 games to start the season. Very underwhelming performances in the first 2 games of the season, and now their big players have stepped up and Hartel and Toyshirt and Betcher, who if they start to click and they're scoring goals, this St. Louis team is a little bit of a dark horse in the Western Conference.
You really believe that, Dax?
Yeah, I do. They have
Okay.
Gargs. When you don't concede goals, when you have a great goalkeeper and you have a back line who's secure and
Hmm.
who can keep clean sheets, you just need 1 or 2 chances on the other end, and they didn't take any chances. They looked terrible against San Diego. But look, they looked better against the Galaxy, and look, everyone looks good against the Galaxy right now. So
Everyone looks good against the
take
Galaxy.
it with a
They've
grain of salt. But I think the St. Louis team can just continue to get better. They have a defensive foundation that not a lot of teams have.
that is true. I would agree with that. I don't know if I'm a believer in the competition that they've faced yet, and what I saw from them in at least the first half of the game. I don't really think that they've created a whole heck of a lot still, which is the name of the
True.
game, right?
Dan,
They've
look at the Western Conference. It's what other than Seattle and LAFC, there's it's maybe San Diego. I don't want to underplay what San Diego's doing.
I'm
They
still
were
I'm still not sold on San Diego. They're an expansion team.
fair enough, but I'm telling you, man, the West is wide open.
Yeah.
Wide open.
Yep, that's fair, and it is early. So let's talk about the albatross in the room, in Marco Reus, because you bring him in, right? And yes, he's a compliment to Ricky Puig. Ricky Puig is out. He's not running the show. So was that the interest in bringing him in? Was he supposed to be the complement to the inavailability of Ricky Puig? Is he supposed to be able to score goals when Ricky doesn't? And if it's not him, then where is the understudy at this point? Gordo, what do you see?
From Royce, I mean,
Did you see
It's,
him
it's
standing
similar. It's
watching?
similar to
it's
Giroud.
it's similar to. I was just about to say the same thing. It's like, yes, he played a little bit better. He looks a little bit, but we're like begging for these guys to be like have something that they were signed to do, and it's
Yeah.
just it's really not there. It's like, is it good enough for them just to be a little bit better, or did they come in on massive contracts, massive resumes across the world that are supposed to be league beaters, and they're just not doing it? So with all that being said, he's a phenomenal player. However, he's just not the guy that is going to take over Ricky's spot, and dominate a game and create all these chances. He's very, very unselfish. He's even a little bit too unselfish for me. He's
Hmm.
so willing to give everybody the ball, which is a great thing if you have a great team around you. Like, he can give Ricky the ball and be in good spots and bounce
Yeah.
it. Like, he's brilliant. He's got a super high IQ. However, he's got to realize that we need more from you at this point. I want to
That's
see
not
him
his
play.
role right now.
It's
Can't
not,
be.
but he needs to. I want him to be more like Beckham was. Beckham, when he got the ball, he was trying to hit the golden pass every
Uh,
single time, because he's trying to change the game. Everybody else defend for David, and David would run everywhere. He'd be on the left, he'd be on the right, he'd be on a soft pocket down deep. He'd go, he was going everywhere, trying to get the ball on his foot, and he's looking forward to hit a game-winning ball. Royce needs to do more of that. We need him to be a little bit more selfish.
Yeah, to Gordo's point, I watched the first half back, and Marco Reus was really good. He was very active. He was making final passes, to Gordo's point. But there was a play where I wanted him to be more selfish. He got played a ball in when the Galaxy were dominating, and he was inside the box, and he made a great pass, one touch pass to Christian Ramirez, who then took a shot, and it went right at Berkey, and Berkey made a good save.
dude, that was an incredible save. Incredible pass too.
It was a great pass, but
Yeah.
there is another alternate reality in which Royce takes the ball forward, takes a touch forward, and shoots because he wants to be the guy that changes
Hmm.
the game, you know?
Hmm.
And so I'm not saying it was the wrong soccer decision. It was a great pass, but he is the main man now. He has to be the guy that is pushing this Galaxy team forward and to score goals. And sometimes when your teammates aren't doing it, like, you have to be the one to do it. You have to be the one to grab the game and go change it and be selfish. He's an
Yeah.
unselfish player, but he has so much quality. I want him to be more selfish. And so, look, it was his best game, in my opinion, in a Galaxy uniform, but it still wasn't enough. And then to to Dan's point he made off camera about the first St. Louis goal, he's a mannequin. He's standing at the back post, and his player just runs right on the inside of him, and he just stands there for 5 seconds watching the ball bounce around in the box. And look, he's not a defender, but still, you'd like to see a little bit more. You'd like to see some sort of reaction. And so, look, when he plays great, there's still stuff that you're concerned about. And I don't know if Marco Reus, and this is crazy to say because he's been playing at the highest level for 15 years. I just don't know if he's the same player to be able to go and change a game like Ricky Puig could.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, do you think does he still have it?
I think he still has it, but not to the point where he's going to materially change games for MLS. He has it in a sense of, like, he's like an elegant player to watch. He
Yeah.
gets on the ball,
Yeah,
he's
super. I
casual,
mean,
he's
incredibly
calm.
talented.
Like, he makes the game look easy. It comes easy for him. But the Galaxy, they don't need that right now. They need someone who is going to drive this team forward and inspire them to win games. He's not
Yeah,
doing it.
he's a luxury player, and they don't have the luxury pieces around the luxury player right now, which
That's it.
is not a good combination. The Galaxy they're in for a long stretch here, in my opinion. They have a lot of, I think, onboarding to do, right? I mean, even when they start to get these players back, you still got to bring them into the squad. You still got to catch them up to speed, get while the train is moving, right? Like they're still playing games every week. It's gonna be a tough management project for Vanny, and his staff because there's a lot of moving pieces here. I want to talk just also a little bit about the surprises, maybe potentially of this early season. Philly picks up another win, 3-0, and in my opinion, emphatic fashion, 3-0, not a questionable 3-0. Dax, are they the best team in the league right now?
Easily. Easily the best, most impressive team in the league. It's not even close. They have the best striker in the league. They have the best fullback in the league. And then they have pieces around these guys that are playing well. And they've beaten two, in my opinion, very good teams and teams that will be in the playoffs in FC Cincinnati and Orlando City. And then they've
Hmm.
beaten a team that's not good in New England. But you can only play the teams on your schedule, and they're just a buzzsaw right now. Kai Wagner didn't have a great year last year. He is David Beckham, a left-footed David Beckham
Hmm.
reincarnated. If you go watch their goals, his service is stunning.
His
Ty
service has been
Baribo,
impressive for a while.
Ty
He did have
Baribo
a
has
down year last year.
Ty Baribo has 6 goals, all of them one-touch finishes
Yep.
from 6 to 7 yards out.
Yep.
That's the sign of we made the comparison on MLS Season Pass of Ty Baribo to Chris Wondolowski.
Mm.
Very similar in terms of
Hmm.
how their movement is and how they score goals. Philly is excellent. On the flip side of that, Vancouver. I didn't know what to make of Vancouver going into the season. I really, really enjoy watching Ryan Gauld and Brian White, the combination that they have. But listen, they had a new coach playing a new system with players that were Vanni Sartini's players.
Hmm.
They've been great. And listen, I have questions because I don't think the schedule that they played has been that strong. They beat a Portland Timbers team who I don't think is very good, and they were up a man for 80 minutes. They beat a struggling LA Galaxy team and a very not good CF Montreal team, but they're still winning games. You guys know how it is. You can play up to the level of your competition and down to the level of your competition. And Vancouver's just been steady and they're just methodical in how they go about things. And I want to give a special shout out to their midfield of Sebastian Berhalter, Andres Cubas, and Pedro Vite. They've started all 3 league games for them, and they have been the foundation of that team. Andres Cubas is a defensive midfielder that doesn't get enough credit. He's a pit bull. He reminds me a little bit of a miniature Ozzy Alonso in how he goes about and runs that team. The only concern I have now with Vancouver is obviously the injury to Ryan Gauld. Fingers crossed that it's not serious. It looked
Hmm.
serious, but he had to be helped off the field. I'm hoping that it's not a long-term injury because if they lose him, you're losing a Ricky Puig type piece for your team. So
Hmm.
both those teams, 3 wins in the first 3 games of the season. Very impressed with both of them.
Okay, so I'll ask you the same question. Do you think that Philly can sustain this?
Yeah, I think Philly sustains this, and I think Vancouver has a little bit of a drop off. But Philly, for me, it's all working, man. It's all working, just like it was with Bradley Carnell's first year in St. Louis. Sometimes things just fall into place, and right now Philly looks unstoppable.
What's the differentiator for you to be able to say that you do feel like Philly sustains this?
I think Philly has more ways to hurt you. They just have more variety of attack to hurt you. I think that if Baribo's not scoring, then you still can bring in your record signing off the bench in Bruno Damiani. You still
Hmm.
have Quinn Sullivan and Daniel Gazdag, who are fantastic, and they've been creative forces for that team. I think Quinn Sullivan has leveled up this year. I think that Kevin Sullivan's been the one that people have talked about a lot, but Quinn Sullivan is actually one of the best young players in MLS, and I'd be shocked if the Philadelphia Union don't start entertaining big offers from European teams for him this year. And then look, they brought in a whole new midfield. I think Jovan Lukic and Jean Jacques at the base of that midfield have been great. They allow the fullbacks to get forward, provide
Hmm.
service, and that front four, they're just really dangerous, man. And in Vancouver, I just can't see them sustaining this run. They're trying to balance 2 competitions, and Ryan Gauld's injury just makes me wary.
Brian Gauld's injury is not a good one. We talked about them at the end of last year and how significant all of those partnerships were and how well they played off of one another. Losing a leg
And
is
I also, Dan, just
not
want
good.
to one more thing that obviously I'm going to go on the other side of it. One of the teams that's been the least impressive in MLS is the New England Revolution.
Hmm.
They have 0 goals scored in 3 games. They haven't, and I'm not like a big expected goals guy. I think it's a little piece to an overall analysis that you can use. They haven't had an expected goals total in any game over 1. They aren't creating chances, and Leo Campana, their main massive number 9 signing, he just limped off injured against Philly. Uh, this team is more solid defensively, but man, they have a tough schedule coming up. They can't score goals, and you just lost your number 9 that is supposed to be the one to score goals for you. Caleb Porter, man, I don't know. There's something that looks off in New England. This is his team now, and I know they have a lot of new players, and maybe it takes a little bit of time to gel. I don't see it with this team. I think that New England is in a lot of trouble.
Gordo, we talked a little bit about Caleb Porter last year and kind of the struggles that they were going through. You do have a preseason to get it right. You certainly learn a lot about your team last year. You bring some new pieces in. What type of window do you feel like he has to turn this thing into something that you maybe can believe in?
You know, I would say on any other organization, I think his leash would be pretty short. But we're talking about the New England Revolution here, who are not necessarily the team that's going to go ahead and turn over and eat contracts. You know, historically pretty tight with their bankroll. So I would say give them. You know, they're going to give them to the summer. But things, I mean, Dax said it all. They aren't good. He has not since. I mean, we were making excuses for him with all the injuries he had either last year or the year before. You don't have that excuse anymore. You don't have that excuse.
What do
And
you
It is
so
his
think?
they,
team
What do you
now.
think, Gordo? What do you think the excuse is in New England? Like if we went and asked New England, because we can only hypothesize from the outside looking in, but you guys have all been a part of bad teams where you can internally point to certain things. What is New England saying?
it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what their excuses are. It doesn't. There's no excuses anymore. I mean, this league is we've talked about the growth of the league. You are falling way behind. You are the
Hmm.
worst team in the league. You haven't scored a goal like Dax said, and there's no excuses. You got to win. This is a very, very tough competitive league. And if you're not firing, you've had plenty of time to get your team ready, just like everybody else. San Diego's an expansion team. Do you think that you've had more or less time than San Diego? They're 2-1 right now. They look great.
Yeah, but San Diego also, I mean, we know this, like expansion sides have a leg up on the competition in year one. They do. They get
Yeah, but this is
No,
year
they
mechanisms
three
that
don't.
for him.
Guards, come on. No, they
yeah,
don't.
they
They
do.
have
They're
more
not
money. They have more money at their disposal, but how are you going to say that an expansion team has a leg up on
There's
anyone?
no
They haven't
chance.
played
No
in
together
chance.
ever.
I think that okay, let me articulate that. I think that expansion sides have a leg up on clubs that already are saddled with X, Y, and Z of contracts, injuries, dollars associated that are still there. They may not have a leg up on clubs that are sustainable like a Seattle or like an LA Galaxy or an LAFC or an Atlanta United or whatever, but I do think that they have a leg up on situations that internally the New England Revolution would say they are in with a Caleb Porter. Caleb Porter, what you would ask him, and he would say, "Well, I have this guy and this guy and this guy, and we got allocated money out our asses for 3 years that I don't want to spend." Expansion franchises and Mikey Veras, he has the ability to then say, "No, I want this guy, I want this guy, I want this guy, and this is how I'm going to build my team." I'm not saying that there aren't
Okay, well,
limitations there, but I do think that they have a leg up on the competition to go into year one and have success.
I think that that's a fair point, but I also think Caleb Porter does not have that excuse because
I'm
he's
not
been in the
offering
job for a
Caleb
year and a
Porter
half
an
now.
excuse. I'm not
Okay, well,
saying that.
I'm just saying they consciously made all these roster decisions and they turned over the roster because he wanted to get his own players in
Yep.
and he got his players. This is his team, no one else's team, and he coached this team for a year. So he still has the spine of players that he wanted to keep and his
Hmm.
methodology and how he wants to play. The only excuse I can think he would come up with is they've had a pretty difficult schedule so far. They've played some good teams, and they played Columbus and Philly. I think who will be challenging in the East, and they were
Two
on the
losses.
yeah, exactly. And home losses, mind you. And then they played on the road in Nashville, which even if Nashville's not great, that's a tough game. So that's his excuse. But again, I think Gordo's right. It's not good enough. You don't have that luxury anymore. If they were losing games 2-1, 3-2, then at least you could say, all right, well, we're scoring goals. Maybe we just have to like figure things out in the back a little bit. But look,
Hmm.
they were he has sacrificed attacking play for defensive solidity. But again, when you come up against these teams who are better than you, they're going to score. And if you don't offer any threat going the other way, you're just going to lose games. You're going to lose way more games than you win. So I think this team is in a lot of trouble.
Gordo, do you like San Diego? Do you
Yeah,
like their
yeah,
squad?
yeah. Dryer scores again. I mean, he looks like a player. He looks like a guy that's ready for the league and going to have a fantastic season. I like what they're doing. How could you not?
Yeah, no, that's fair. I think we've seen expansion franchises and the emotional roller coaster that they jump on and get to benefit from. We've also watched expansion franchises fall off cliffs and hit, those proverbial walls. Um, Minnesota comes to mind that
Yeah.
versus the Atlanta. Where would you put San Diego if you had to bank on them as a stock moving forward to fall within this league? Where do you think they fall? Tier one, tier two, tier three?
Oh, they're not tier one. I mean, we talked about the tier one teams. There has to be some kind of history there. But if we're talking about just this season, I'm gonna put them right on the playoff line. I think as the ups and downs and the summer comes, I think it's going to be it's a grueling league for any team. Their first year in, I think they're going to be fighting for that eighth spot in the playoffs in the playing game. That's where I would put them. But like Dak said, the West is wide open. Like nobody's taking control. You can tell the LAFC, Seattle, as we talked about, they're going to be solid, right? They're going to
Hmm.
be solid. They're going to be consistently good throughout the year. We have a lot to see from a lot of these other teams. San Jose, praising them, for the first two games.
Hmm.
Come out with a goose egg this weekend and lose. But they're gonna be fighting for a playoff spot as well. I think that the West is going to be super tight as it always is in the MLS. Everybody's going to be within, a couple points of each other at the end, and another decision day miracle is going to happen, and these teams are going to really be fighting for their lives right at the end of the season. It's going to be exciting.
I'm putting San Diego a little bit higher, and not because I love them, just because I think that the honeymoon phase tends to go well. And another point for you, Dax, that I think speaks to them having a leg up on some of this is they don't have the fixture congestion that some of these other clubs do. They haven't qualified for them, so good, bad, or indifferent, you don't have to play the games. You don't have to rotate your roster as much. You don't have to have the depth that maybe some of these other clubs do, and you're not required at this point. So I'm going to put them higher up. But I think that's good for today. Another California club that's on the map, San Diego, doing maybe what we expected them to do, but also performing. You still got to win the games. Still got to put points on the board, and they're doing that. So it's a good thing to see for the league, a good thing to see for that market. Journeyman, good to see you. We'll check you out there.